Hey, welcome back to our study. We're looking at Titus chapter 2, and today we're looking at verses 3 through 4. We're talking about the older women of the church. We talked about the older men in our last study, and now we're looking at older women and the younger women as well in turn. But Paul starts off with the older women of the church and what they must do and what they must be like. And so Paul starts off with a phrase, they are to be likewise. So as Paul transitions from the older men to the older women, he uses the word likewise. And this is not just a throwaway phrase here. This shows us that there's a common expectation of all Christians, regardless of whether they are male or female. There's a way that a Christian behaves. They act in a way that is different from the rest of humanity. So even though Paul addresses individual groups here, in this commonality, there's this commonality that connects all of them together. Paul does something very similar when he writes to Timothy in 1 Timothy 2, 8 through 10. He first addresses men on how they ought to behave, and then he says, likewise, also that women. So in the church, we might have different roles or different stations, but we have a common call to behave in a way that reflects our common faith. In the body, some are eyes, some parts are feet, but they have a different function, right? But each is peculiar. They have a special role. An eye does not function the same way as a hand or a foot or a fingernail. There's a difference there. And all those differences are good. We need the differences. Now, the thing that Paul says here is that the older women are to be reverent in behavior. Older women in their behavior ought to be reverent. They are to act in a way that is befitting a person who is sacred to God. She has been bought and purified by the blood of Christ. She has been separated from the world for a noble purpose. She is no longer a child of the darkness, but a child of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. She is no common woman. She has been elevated and must carry herself in that way. So whether she eats or drinks or whatever she does, she is to do all to the glory of God. The measure of her behavior is whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, excellent things, and things worthy of praise. She is to adorn herself with what is proper for women who profess godliness, with good works. After Paul states the positive, he counters with the negative. Older women in the church must not be slanderers. The word used here is diabolos, which is the root word for our English devil. Matthew Henry said, a slanderer is one whose tongue is set on fire of hell. So much and so directly do these do the devil's work, that for it the devil's name is given such. Older women are to be reverent, not like the devil. The devil's a false accuser, a slanderer. Making false accusations make you just like Satan. Remember what Jesus said to Peter? Get behind me. Older women should have a healthy fear of falling into the trap of the devil and acting just like him. They should not be slanderers, false accusers. And that's what Paul's saying. They shouldn't be devils. Anecdotally, I've talked to many pastors and men in the ministry, and even from my own experience, it is by the hands of older women that you experience the most false accusations. It's true. I've seen it, talked to other pastors. That's what happens. Mostly the false accusations, the slandering comes from older women, not younger women, not men, not young men. It's the older women, which is really interesting. And just proves what Paul says here. This is a tactic of Satan. He uses older women to become diabolos, to become like him. And so that's something that older women need to be aware of, because it's a scheme of the devil. It's a temptation that is peculiar to older women, which is pretty interesting. But you can see that even outside of the church, you see that older women, for whatever reason, well, we know what reason, it's Satan. He likes to use older women as slanderers, as backbiters, as false accusers. Now, older men, on the other hand, they fail in their steadfastness. and then they just walk away from you. But here, Paul says older women are diabolical. Old men are just become cowards, and they become undependable, and they just disappear. But older women become diabolical. So older women, you have to know this. You must guard your hearts against this, because this is a tactic that Satan wants to use. For the sake of the church, sake of Christ, you must fight against this temptation. You have to hate this sin of being a slanderer. The next thing that is another command of Paul from the Holy Spirit is that they are not to be slaves to much wine. This is a common command that was given directly to the elders, and then it's again mentioned directly towards older women. It's also tied up in the idea of being sober-minded, though the word obviously has broader applications. The idea is that older women should not be addicted to substances that can influence their mind and behavior. Reverent behavior and substance abuse and addiction do not go hand in hand. Can't have both. They're actually diametrically opposed. Reverence requires the engagement of the mind and heart and strength, which drunkenness and drug abuse both impair or destroy. So substance abuse would only hinder her from doing what she must do. The question is then, what must she do? Well, they're to teach younger women. So older women are commanded to teach what is good and so train the young women. First, it's implied that older women know what is good, and so they, like the elders, must hold fast to the trustworthy word as they had been taught. Second, the older women are given this special charge. They have the responsibility to ensure that the generation coming up behind them have been trained. Now, Titus and the elders have a general responsibility to teach, to oversee, to train, to build up all the people in the church, including older women, but the older women and the younger women, but the older women have a special task. They have a specific task of training the young women. If the young women in the church are rebellious, promiscuous, mean, they shirk their responsibilities, then part of the problem may fall to the failure of the older women in the church. I've seen this in churches where many of the younger women that grew up in the church were unmarried. They're unmarried teen moms. They wore clothing that left nothing to the imagination. They were, backbiters. They had no respect for leadership. Unfortunately, when you looked at the older women of the church, they did not teach what was good and often encouraged the younger women in their sinful behavior. In fact, many of the older women would act the same way the younger women did. And so if the younger women were promiscuous, if they were, trying to tempt men, and then it was because the older women in the church were doing the same thing. So those are some specific sins for women, older women, younger women to be careful, to watch out for, because these are things like, oh, I never do that. Women need to take heed lest you fall. You need to be careful, because we know this is one of the tactics of the devil. He wants to use these things against you. So watch yourself in these. Know that these temptations will come. Don't pretend that they're not going to come. They will come. And you need to prepare yourself now for when they do. And if you're in one of these situations, then you have to fight with all your might against those temptations. Fight against these sins. And by the power of the Holy Spirit, you can overcome. You can overcome, but you can't give in to this. So if you see it happening in you, apologize. Go and, make restitution for the damage you've caused. And then strive never to do it again. Well, that's the end of our study for today. Next time, we'll take a look at what the younger women ought to be, what they should be learning from the older women.